WNYC Studios is supported by Forward. Waiting months for a 10-minute doctor's appointment? Healthcare is backwards. Luckily, Forward is here to clear things up with on-demand access to great care backed by the latest tech and top-rated doctors. Learn more at goforward.com. That's goforward.com.
Listener supported. WNYC Studios.
This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart, and we are going to talk about the Smithsonian Anthology of Hip Hop and Rap.
All right, y'all. Here we go. You just clap your hands and you stomp your feet, cause you're listening to the sound of the show shot beat. I'm the K-I-N-G, the T-I-M, King Tim the Third, and I am him, just me, Fat, and the crew. We're doing it all just for you. We're strong as an ox and tall as a tree. We can rock you so viciously. We throw the highs in your eyes, the bass in your face. We're the funk machines that rock the human race. Skate down,
King Tim III by the Fatback Band came out on March 25th, 1979, several months before Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang, the track most people think of as the beginning of recorded rap. At the time, the Fatback Band was marketed as a dance funk group and wasn't really recognized as rap music. But in the new anthology from the Smithsonian, the band gets their due as the first artist featured on a 9-CD box set. The Smithsonian Anthology of Hip Hop and Rap also features a 300-page book covering 4 decades of the genre with essays from music scholars, executives, performers, including Chuck D, who served on the executive committee alongside Questlove, Ninth Wonder, and former Def Jam exec Bill Stephanie, the person who signed the seminal group Public Enemy. Bill joins me now. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Allison. How are you?
I'm great. And also joining us is Say Adams, former creative director of Def Jam, who served as an advisor on the anthology and curated the box set design. Welcome back to the show, Say. I don't know if Say can hear me. Bill, I'm going to start with you. For you to be involved in this project, what was essential that it included in its vision for the history of hip hop and rap? What was really important to you?
Yeah, that's a good question, Allison. I think just overall integrity of the effort, that the collective approach of all the participants, folks involved in it, just had a sense of the importance and the nuances of the culture of that which was developed, largely in the Bronx in Harlem some 45 to 50 years ago, and that we represent it really with the heart and soul that was intended by the music and the culture and the dance and the art some 45, 50 years ago.
Bill, you wrote essays and some blurbs in the book about Run DMC, Rapper's Delight, Public Enemy, of course, Missy Elliott. Was there one artist that you were really excited to include in the anthology or to tell people about who maybe haven't gotten their due? For me directly, no, and I'm not sure whether or not this assemblage collection, whatever folks want to phrase it as, was really intended to be, revelatory in that regard. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that putting together the I guess what is the 130 songs mm-hmm. Over the 9 discs. That it seemed to be more celebratory than, revealing, revelatory in that regard. A lot of the music that's featured and the artists that have been featured, were big hits. Yeah. Were pop hits, were huge on MTV and BET, and we wanted. I think, and I don't want to speak for everyone involved, but I have a sense that we wanted to, in essence, create an assemblage of what has been one of the most unique music cultural histories that American cultural history has ever seen. Say, with the history of hip-hop, music is obviously central, but also the visuals are so important. It would be an incomplete history without the visuals. They're the clothing, the graffiti, the book includes artifacts.
How did you think about the kind of visuals that you thought needed to be included in this anthology, say?
Well, for me, I've always thought of this project as a legacy project. Mm-hmm. It has to cram, like Bill just said, 45 to even 50 years of history. That is a long time. And then if you break it down in chapters, let's just take the graffiti chapter, for example. I've been making art and design for 40 years. That's just me. So how do I acknowledge all of my peers? There are so many people, and we have 10 pages and an essay. It is very, very difficult, and you're going to leave a lot of people out. And then you go from essay to essay, chapter to chapter, and it is the same situation. We are doing the best we can to tell this story, and this is just a slice of, what the culture had to offer over that period of time.
My guests are Bill Stephanie and Say Adams. They helped craft the Smithsonian Anthology of Hip Hop and Rap. So, Bill, you wrote an essay in the book called The Hip Hop Economy. And, of course, you have expertise as a former president of Def Jam and a longtime media consultant. What is unique about, or what was unique about the economics of hip hop?
One of the last essays that we have in the collection, I had the pleasure to write, and it was about Drake's song, Started from the Bottom. And, I think Started from the Bottom can serve, as a thematic description of how the economy, of hip-hop started, of, young people, kids really, going into parks, into community centers and housing projects, or even apartments in the case of Kool Herc on Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx, along with his sister, and creating a party economy where folks were charged to come in and dance and enjoy music and enjoy DJs, and from that point, those efforts launched, what has now been, as they just referred to, this 45 to 50 year journey from an economic and business standpoint of these sort of viral parties in the Bronx and Harlem, extending now globally to multi-billion-dollar enterprises, probably most notably punctuated by the deal and relationship between Beats headphones, as developed by Dr. Dre Young and his partner Jimmy Iovine, the hip hop label executive and impresario, and their partnership with Apple. That deal that they propelled was valued somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 billion. So, wow. To have seen a culture largely driven by young Black and brown folks, develop into an industry, a multiplicity of billions of dollars of value, is probably the unique story of the economy of hip hop.
Say, you've been part of the scene since the early days. I'm curious, what has changed over the years in the way people remember and discuss the history in that first decade of hip hop and rap?
Well, the thing that occurs to me is young people today, they don't know the full story. But what happens a lot is they are celebrating the folks that came along in the 80s. And that's 40, 30, 40 years ago, depending on, where you start. But that's sort of where we are. Everybody's in celebration mode. Every artist wants to be, Jean-Michel, and every rapper wants to be Jay-Z. I don't know that it translates in dance so much because, I don't know a lot about how dance has evolved as it relates to hip hop. But the thing that's fascinating to me about a project like this is how we started with absolutely nothing and everything, and depending on what the genre is, has just grown and expanded. I've been on your show before, and we've talked about my career and all of it, and no pun intended. But all of that is born out of hip hop. And I come from, graffiti, which is now more or less called street art.
Bill, there's the 9 CDs feature 129 tracks, which were winnowed down from, legend says, 900 tracks, which is completely believable. An advisory committee put together the original list, and then you and the executive committee did the winnowing. What was that process like, besides hard?
Exhausting.
Sure.
Took many years. We began this project in 2014. So, time was on our side, I think, in that regard. And, we didn't have the demands immediately of deadlines that would force us to make, very difficult decisions. But whenever you're involved in, something that incorporates collective decision making, it could be an election, it could be just your family figuring out what to have for dinner. It's always fraught with, some level of disagreement, or difference, which is good. And I think that the overall collection represents those differences in a very accurate way.
Say, what does it mean to you, this idea that decades later you are working with the Smithsonian as a curator on the history
Oh my
of
goodness. You totally hit the nail on the head. Allison, I've been waiting a full lifetime for a project like this.
Right.
I'm working with the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I just mentioned that I come from graffiti and or street art. So for me, it is the epitome of success. The Smithsonian is the highest museum in the land. I have the book in my hand. I turn it over, and there's a quote on the back from President Obama. And the idea that I was lucky enough to do a giant black American flag on the National Mall in 2016 for the ribbon cutting ceremony of the opening of the museum in front of President Obama and literally the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Bill, you wrote the blurb for the final track on the anthology, Drake's Started from the Bottom. You mentioned it earlier. Why is this song the right one for the conclusion?
Yeah, when I wrote the essay, Allison, I didn't know that it was going to be the concluding essay, but I think there is some poetic justice, as I think I referenced earlier, in us taking an artist who is still incredibly resonant today. He is 7 years after I wrote that essay. Drake is still the leading streamed artist of the year, of the period, and probably, depending on the analytics that one applies, Drake might be the most successful rapper of all time. So I think it makes sense to conclude with Drake as a bridge to where we're at today, since we did close the project from a musical standpoint in terms of what we were analyzing, some 5-6 years ago. But again, thematically, the song itself, I think underscores what hip hop was, what it is, and what it continues to be.
The Smithsonian Anthology of Hip Hop and Rap is available. I've been speaking with Bill Stephanie and Say Adams, who helped make it become a reality. Bill and Say, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
20 years ago, on September 11, the world changed.
I said, this is it. This is the bomb. They did it.
I'm Jim O'Grady with the story of a new American who risked everything to try to take down a terrorist cell.
You have to talk like a terrorist. You have to think like a terrorist.
Blind Spot, The Road to 9/11, a podcast series from the History Channel and WNYC Studios. Listen wherever you get podcasts.